Ever wonder why thousands of Europeans marched thousands of miles to fight in a distant land? Let's travel back to the 11th century to understand the Crusades. By the late 1000s, Europe and the Middle East were connected by faith, trade, and tension. At the center of it all was Jerusalem, a city holy to Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. For centuries, Christian pilgrims had traveled there, but the political landscape was about to change dramatically. In the mid-1000s, a powerful group known as the Seljuk Turks rose to prominence. They conquered vast territories across the Middle East, including Jerusalem. Then, in 1071, they delivered a crushing blow to the Byzantine Empire at the Battle of Manzikert. This victory weakened the Byzantines' hold on Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey, and sent shockwaves across the Christian world. The Byzantine Emperor, Alexios I, was in a tough spot. His empire was shrinking, and he feared total collapse. He sent a desperate plea to the West, asking for military aid. He wasn't looking for a holy war. He just wanted skilled, professional soldiers to help push back the Seljuks. But his request would be interpreted in a way he never imagined. The emperor's appeal reached Pope Urban II, who saw a monumental opportunity. In 1095, at a huge gathering in Clermont, France, the Pope delivered one of the most influential speeches in history. He called on all of Christian Europe to take up arms, march east, and reclaim Jerusalem. He promised protection for pilgrims and a path to spiritual salvation for those who fought. His words were like a spark in a tinderbox, and all of Europe caught fire. So, who answered this call, and why? The reasons were as diverse as the people themselves. For many, it was about pure religious devotion. They truly believed that fighting for the Holy Land would grant them forgiveness for their sins. But faith wasn't the only motivator. Others were driven by the promise of land, wealth, and adventure. For some peasants and younger sons of nobles with no inheritance, it was a chance to escape a life of poverty and build a new future. Faith and earthly ambition marched side by side. And so, in 1096, the First Crusade began. Tens of thousands of knights, soldiers, and common folk started the long, treacherous journey east. This was no simple march. The path was brutal. They faced starvation, rampant disease, and constant attacks. Many died before they even laid eyes on the walls of Jerusalem. It was a grueling test of survival and will. After 3 long years, in July 1099, the remaining Crusader forces finally reached their goal. They laid siege to Jerusalem and, after a fierce battle, breached the walls. What followed was a brutal sack of the city. Thousands of Muslim and Jewish inhabitants were killed. For the victorious Crusaders, it was a moment of divine triumph. For the people of Jerusalem, it was an unspeakable tragedy. But the story doesn't end there. The newly established Crusader states in the Middle East were islands in a hostile sea. They were not left unchallenged. Over time, Muslim leaders began to unite against the invaders. The most famous of these leaders was Salah al-Din, known in the West as Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. He was a brilliant military commander and a unifying figure. In 1187, Saladin's forces met the Crusader army at the Battle of Hattin. It was a catastrophic defeat for the Crusaders. Shortly after, Saladin marched on Jerusalem. He reclaimed the city for Islam, but in a stark contrast to the capture in 1099, he largely spared the civilian population, allowing many to ransom themselves or leave peacefully. Saladin's victory prompted more crusades from Europe over the next 2 centuries. Some were massive military campaigns, while others were disastrous failures. Some crusades were even redirected against fellow Christians. But the tide had turned. The Crusader presence in the Holy Land dwindled until 1291, when the last major Crusader stronghold, the city of Acre, fell. For all practical purposes, the era of the Crusades was over. The impact of these wars, however, would last for centuries. The Crusades fundamentally reshaped the relationship between Europe and the Middle East. They stimulated trade and led to an exchange of ideas and technologies. But they also created deep-seated religious hostility and a legacy of mistrust, the echoes of which can still be felt in our world today. The Crusades weren't just one war. They were a complex, centuries-long series of conflicts driven by faith, greed, fear, and power. Understanding this pivotal moment in history is key to understanding the forces that have shaped our modern world. For more historical lessons, like and subscribe to Vaulted Media. Thanks for watching.